This week, Ukraine marks 31 years of independence from the former Soviet Union. This week also marks 6 months since the start of the Russian invasion. For civilians, there are warnings of new Russian airstrikes on the capital city. And for the Ukrainian military, news of more weapons on the way from the West. I'm Brent, Goff in Berlin. This is The Day.
We can't forget that Putin's invasion of Ukraine really started in 2014.
8 years ago, Russia illegally annexed Crimea.
Putin is planning to do to other parts of Ukraine, indeed all of Ukraine, what he has done to Crimea.
We are with you in your fight to resist Russia's invasion.
Only the Ukrainians, only you, have the right to decide on the future of Ukraine.
They reject a world where might makes right, where great powers can just swallow up smaller states if they like.
NATO has stood with Ukraine throughout 3 decades of independence. We stand with Ukraine now.
Also coming up, the profound impact of this war on German power, how that power is generated and how it's wielded.
We are experiencing a watershed moment. This means the world afterwards is not the same as the world before.
And to our viewers watching on PBS in the United States and to all of you around the world, welcome. We begin the day on the eve of an Independence Day unlike any in the history of Ukraine. In the capital, Kyiv, people usually celebrate this national holiday with parties and parades, but this year, a war is getting in the way. Today, Ukrainian President Zelensky said that some people are once again evacuating Kyiv on fears of renewed Russian airstrikes. The United States has warned that the Russian military may be planning to intensify its attacks on civilian targets just as this invasion enters its 7th month. And there are more weapons shipments from the West headed for Ukraine. The U.S. is expected to announce $3 billion more this week, and Germany is expected to follow suit with €500 million worth. 6 months into this war, there is no end in sight. We begin tonight with this report.
Hoisting the national flag ahead of Ukraine's Independence Day, a usually festive commemoration. But not this year, as it also marks 6 months since Russia's invasion.
We will never recognize anyone's flag over our land and in our sky. We are always ready to defend our blue and yellow colors. I ask you now to commemorate with a moment of silence the heroes who gave their lives for that.
Ukraine has banned bigger celebrations over fear of fresh Russian strikes. In Kyiv whatsoever, not everyone shares that concern.
We do feel a bit tense, but it doesn't disrupt our lives. This is our reality.
No, I have no feeling of insecurity. I come from Kharkiv. It is dangerous there. In Kyiv, I don't have this feeling. I've been living here for a month. No insecurity. Of course, we know that there can be attacks. When we are worried, we can hide.
Yes, you can feel the tension a bit. There's just too much information about, and that has an effect on you. Otherwise, everything else seems to be working. Business and transport. What else can you do? You can't hide in the basement forever. Life has to go on.
We want to go to Kyiv now and bring in Kira Rudik. She is a member of the Ukrainian Parliament. Kira, it's good to have you with us tonight. We've spoken many times in the last 6 months. I want you to take me back to those early hours of the 24th of February when Russian tanks began crossing the Ukrainian border. What went through your mind and through your heart?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Well, my first thought was when the bombarding of Kyiv started, I thought it was fireworks. because we were concentrated on Ukrainian parliament on actually forbidding fireworks for the sake of veterans and for the sake of people of Ukraine. And then my first thought was, how would we get all the members of Ukrainian parliament in? And I can tell you the main thing that parliament needs to do at the times of war is to gather together at the building of the Rada, where by constitution we have to vote for the martial law. This is the main thing, the main goal and the main purpose of the parliament at the times of war. And we were extremely concerned that distressed and distracted members of parliament may not be able physically to get to the parliament at these times of absolute fear. And of 420 members of parliament, 400 came. And we were there for 10 minutes of voting. We were singing national anthem because we were so scared. And then we went and started doing our job and arming people, working with people on humanitarian support, building the resistance, making sure that the prediction that Ukraine will only stand for a couple of days will not actually happen. And after 6 months, I can only say one thing: watch us.
Yeah, I mean, we are, and the world is watching you, Kira, and it has been an eventful 6 months. You mentioned that you were fearful that first evening because of what could happen. Now, 6 months into this war, are you fearful that we know what's going to happen, that this war could last for a very, very long time?
What 6 months of war taught us, that you cannot live with fear. You need to live with very pragmatic and tactical decisions that you are making every day to bring the end of the war closer. And this is what we are concentrated at. Are we afraid of potential nuclear threat from Russia? Yes, we are. This is my personal main threat right now, because I'm worried so much of what could happen at Zaporizhzhia AES. Are we worried that the war could take for a long time? Of course we are, but what can we do with that? We can only make sure that we do everything possible and impossible for this prophecy not to be fulfilled. Are we worried that there could be a Ukraine fatigue? We are, but at the same time, there was a survey in the United States where 80% of Americans are supporting Ukraine and still willing to pay more for gas and electricity to continue the support.
Well, Kira, let me just ask you that. You say the American resolve is still there. What about in Ukraine? Americans are not having, to send their troops to the front lines. Ukrainians are doing that. You're paying a terrible price defending yourself against the Russians. How strong is the resolve to keep going indefinitely?
The resolve is still there and is still extremely strong. And we can see it not only by the amount of people who are ready to go and fight, but by the results of our army and by the general morale and emotion in the society. This month we finally started receiving the weapons that we were promised a while ago. And our army has shown an incredible effectiveness and efficiency using these weapons. And we are showing the results of pushing Russians back from our territories and the hope to regain our sovereignty. And this has this unbelievable morale boost on every single Ukrainian, and a willingness to fight for what we believe in.
Yeah, this morale boost, that brings me to what President Zelensky said today. He said that the war started in Crimea, meaning the illegal annexation back in 2014, and he said the war will end in Crimea. Now, let's be honest, there are few who would have taken him seriously if he had said that, let's say, 6 months ago. But he's saying it now, and I dare say that a lot of people around the world believe that he can actually make that happen now. That's a huge change.
I think this war in these last 6 months have shown us how many changes we can make. From the very beginning, when nobody said that we will stand for more than a couple of weeks, when this opinion changed, to the countries who didn't think that sanctions on Russia as strong as possible as they are right now are possible, and it happened, that the world will start actually sending heavy weapons to Ukraine and not just Kalashnikovs. And it happened that we will be standing and fighting back Russian troops around Kiev. And then it happened that we will be able to use the weapons that we receive with such a great effectiveness. And then it happened. So things that seemed impossible or unbelievable, we make them happen. And this is why we strongly believe that we will be able to do, again, unspeakable things, take back our territory, regain our sovereignty.
Yeah, and Kira, you know, we have to point out to our viewers, behind you is the NATO flag, the Ukrainian flag, and the European Union flag. 6 months.
Flag of my party.
And pride of your party, that's right. Okay, I don't want to forget that. But 6 months into this war, am I correct when I say that the Russian invasion has done more to push Ukraine even deeper into the European family than anything you would have imagined before the war started?
Yes, I think we can openly say that. Russian invasion allowed us to act united and pushed us towards the decisions and steps that would be incredibly hard to do beforehand. And the fact that Ukraine got candidacy to European Union was a huge boost to our morale as well. And also is giving us a clear path of how the country would look and how the country would act when the war ends and when we win. You know, when we've got the candidacy to European Union, many Ukrainians do not understand what the candidacy means. My father does not as well. So he called me and he said, I don't understand what it means, but I know right now that our country has a definite future. And it's extremely important.
Well, I'm sure he feels like he's in good hands if he's in your hands. Kira Rudik, a member of the Ukrainian Parliament. Kira, as always, we appreciate you taking the time, making yourself available to talk with us. Thank you.
Thank you, and glory to Ukraine.
Well, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has precipitated a major shift in German foreign policy, domestic policy, too. Germany is firmly rooted in the transatlantic alliance, but 3 decades of relative peace following the breakup of the Soviet Union, well, that time allowed for friendlier ties with Moscow, and that even developed into a significant dependency on energy imports coming from Russia. Breaking that dependency is now proving costly. But it is a price that German leaders say they are willing to pay, given Russia's attack on Europe's security. DW's Simon Young picks up the story from there.
The brutal conflict in Ukraine threatens peace across Europe. After 6 months, the ripples from it are felt far and wide. A few hundred kilometres to the west, almost 1 million refugees from Ukraine have arrived in Germany. They've needed places to live, schools, healthcare. But they also needed jobs, and German industry needed the skills many Ukrainians brought. From a German viewpoint, a beneficial effect of the war. But has Germany been profoundly changed by Putin's invasion of Ukraine? For Chancellor Scholz, speaking just days after the attack began, it was a transformative moment.
We are experiencing a watershed moment. This means the world afterwards is not the same as the world before.
The big break with the past is surely the government's massive spending increase for Germany's armed forces. A special €100 billion fund will push the annual defence budget closer to the NATO target of 2% of GDP. Another symbol of the new military stance, heavy weapons delivered, albeit after some hesitation, to the Ukrainian battlefield. Sending arms to conflict zones was once taboo. politicians and public, once allergic to anything that smacked of militarism, are now more ready to accept the importance of a solid security strategy.
I believe it has also become clear to the German public that we are indeed threatened militarily in Europe. And therefore we unfortunately have to revise our assessment that there is no longer a conventional adversary in Europe for the German armed forces, which is what we thought in the early 2000s.
For almost 25 years, we've emptied the cupboard. We closed depots and dissolved units. That's why it's very important that we spend these 100 billion euros sensibly and sustainably.
The war has also forced a change in Germany's energy policy. From getting more than half of the natural gas it needs from Russia, it has pushed that down to a quarter and pledged to reduce it even further. The Green Party's Economy and Climate Minister, Robert Habeck, has even allowed some polluting coal-fired power stations to return to operation to keep the lights on through the winter. These are pragmatic responses. Olaf Scholz's coalition came to power promising balanced budgets. Instead, they've opened the public coffers. They wanted to tackle climate change, but the war has pushed the focus onto energy security. And yet, despite these changes of tack, many are still asking whether Germany is ready to step up as a leading nation.
We have a paradigm that we say, we don't really want to lead, we would rather be in the middle, even if we are a big country. We have to put that aside now and grow up in terms of security policy.
I would like to see Germany play an even stronger role in Europe. I can imagine that in terms of sanctions, and also on the question of which individuals in Russia should still be sanctioned, who bear responsibility for this war. Germany could take on a stronger role, a leading role.
Olaf Scholz himself was accused of having the wrong instinct on Vladimir Putin, seeking cooperation rather than confrontation. Some say he has still not committed himself to Ukraine's victory. But it is not the Chancellor alone whose position has needed to change. Across Germany, attitudes are being shifted by a not-so-distant war.
Well, my next guest tonight is a Ukraine and security policy expert here in Germany. Nico Lange is a member of the conservative CDU, the Christian Democrats. He was chief of staff to the defense minister in the last German government. Mr. Lange, it's good to have you with us tonight. There's some news to report tonight. Germany announcing another 500 million euros in weapons headed for Ukraine. A big story. It would have been an even bigger story just a few months ago. Talk to me about how that speaks to how radically this war has changed Germany.
Good evening. It certainly is a paradigm shift for Germany delivering weapons into an active conflict. But if we look at the weapons, I think some pieces are still missing, like armored vehicles. And as we have heard in the discussions you broadcasted before, there is the need of Germany to step up even more, even if the weapons delivered are good and helpful to Ukraine.
Do you believe that the German Chancellor and the current German government, are they committed to Ukraine winning this war?
Well, the political goals have been clearly formulated. The Chancellor and the Minister of Foreign Affairs have repeatedly said Russia must not win. Ukraine has to prevail. And also the G7, while in Elmau in Germany, formulated and supported by Germany, formulated Ukraine has to be brought into a position to end this war. So I would expect this government to live up to these commitments and to its own goals, and therefore more weapons, also armored vehicles and weapons that are helping Ukraine not only to defend itself, but also to reconquer territories are needed, also from Germany.
A few days ago, Mr. Lange, you tweeted this. Germany was slower to deliver weapons. Germany hasn't delivered as many weapons as some would like. And still, natural gas has not gotten cheaper. Was the calculus of the German government 6 months ago the following: the more we help Ukraine, the more Russia will try to hurt Germany?
well, it seems that the calculus was to be very prudent on helping Ukraine because there was a fear of certain forms of escalation. And I think it is perfectly all right in a war that is ongoing and that is at least to a large part unpredictable to verify your hypothesis from the beginning and maybe to correct them. And I think what we have learned during the last 6 months is Ukraine is prevailing. Ukraine is showing an all-society defense very strongly. Ukraine is able to manage and also to use elaborate weapon systems and to learn to use them effectively very quickly. And also Russia is not able to escalate indefinitely. So I think if this hypothesis from a few months ago are not right, there is a moment now after 6 months of war coming out of this summer to correct the approach and to work differently when it comes to weapons delivery. And one must say the delivery of Panzerhaubitze 2000, long-range artillery, and also the Mars 2, which together with the HIMARS from the US and systems from the UK, where Germany is the only nation delivering it, it points into the right direction.
Well, let's look into the future a little bit, Mr. Lange. We've got winter coming up, and you know here in Germany now, everyone's talking about skyrocketing prices for energy, electricity, but of course, natural gas, number one. If we have a long, hard winter, if industry has to shut down, for example, or if we have to ration power at any level, is that going to make Germany's commitment to Ukraine winning even stronger, or is it going to have the opposite effect, in your opinion?
Well, I think we should not create a self-fulfilling prophecy here. I know that many people are worried that the mood will turn, but all the polls, all the surveys I know, they show the consistent support of Germans to show Russia its limits, even if that might be costly. So I would have a little bit more trust into Germans that they are ready. And if you look into the surveys and the polls in Germany more closely, I think there is more room for the government to do more and to be supported by the majority of people.
And what would that look like to do more?
For example, there has been a discussion of delivering armored vehicles. And it is good that Germany announced a new package of weapons deliveries to Ukraine, certainly very helpful and very technologically advanced weapons. But the plan is to deliver most of it in 2023. And Germany's weapon deliveries could be more oriented to the military situation in Ukraine right now. I think the US, the UK, and Central Eastern European countries are leading the way there. And what is needed now to organize counterattacks and to prevail on the front in artillery fire are armored vehicles. And Germany has an industrial base. Germany has certain types of vehicles available in storage. And I think any armored vehicle that is now used in Ukraine to stop the Russian aggression is a better contribution to Germany's security than the same armored vehicles standing around in Germany.
I know we've heard that point made numerous times in the last 6 months. I know there are members in the political establishment here in Berlin who would agree with you. I want to ask you one question before we run out of time. Germany lost a lot of trust with its Eastern European partners, with its closeness to Russia, and particularly with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Is that trust now being regained?
I think it is very important to regain this trust. And if you look into weapons deliveries, that over the last 2 months there have been no new commitments by European powers such as Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and others, while Central Eastern Europe is delivering a lot, and even taking into account that there is a lack of certain capabilities now with Central Eastern European partners. I think Germany should step up, work with them closely, And also, I think for a country such as Germany, it's not the right approach just to be with the partners in the sense to do a little bit of what everybody else already has done. Germany should be more courageous now and also take up a leadership position in EU and NATO. I think that would be an aspect that would create more trust, especially with the partners in Central Eastern Europe.
Nico Lange, we appreciate your time and your analysis as we take a look at how Germany has been transformed 6 months into the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Mr. Lange, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the day is almost done. The conversation, it continues online. You'll find us on Twitter, either at DW News. You can follow me on Twitter at Brent Goff TV. And remember, whatever happens between now and then, tomorrow is another day. We'll see you then, everybody.